That's it. Let's go. Start issuing rifle,
We
submachine
can't
gun.
have those
Get
men
going in.
shot, Captain. They're no good to us, dead.
No shooting? What are we supposed to do? Play tag? Who is this guy, anyway?
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, there are links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to classicmovierev.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Today's movie is Panic in the Streets, 1950. This is a solid film noir that suffers from not having a well-played femme fatale. As Nancy, Barbara Bel Geddes provides the antithesis of a femme fatale in that she leads her man to success, not failure. Instead of a private eye, Richard Widmark plays a weary civil servant who has the begrudging help of a police captain. Jack Palance is like a rabid dog as Blackie. His sidekick Fitch is well played by Zero Mostel. The film has a pretty low 7.3 rating on imdb.com and a 96% on the tomato meter at rottentomatoes.com. Of course, I lean towards the latter. At the time of release, the New York Times critic said, quote, "Although it is excitingly presented, Panic in the Street misses the mark as superior melodrama because it is not without obvious, sometimes annoying exaggerations that demand more indulgence than some spectators may be willing to contribute. However, there is an electric quality to the cinema staged in a warehouse on the New Orleans waterfront that should compensate for minor annoyances which come to the surface spasmodically in Panic in the Streets." Unquote. In 2005, David Lee Simmons, a New Orleans film critic, choosing to focus more on style, wrote, quote, "Expressionist and Italian neo-realistic techniques. Kazan admired how the expressionists used chiaroscuro lighting
You butchered that.
to heighten emotion, and he related to the neo-realist cinema verite portrayal of those living on the margins of society." Unquote. The scenes of old New Orleans were fascinating. Actors.
Right. And I'm a Shakespearean actor.
There are only two returning actors today. Richard Widmark was a pretty good Lieutenant Commander Clint Reed, M.D. Widmark was first covered in The Long Ships, 1964. Emil Meyer showed up in a small uncredited part as Captain Beauclyde, Master of the Nile Queen. Meyer was first covered in the film noir Blackboard Jungle, 1955. Barbara Bel Geddes played homemaker Nancy Reed. Bel Geddes was born in 1922 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
As a part of a theatrical family, Bel Geddes was around the stage from an early age. She was acting by age 18, and it wasn't long until she was on Broadway. She began playing the good girl in films. Mostly a television and stage actress, she had around 14 movies, which include I Remember Mama, 1948, for which she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, the Western film noir Blood on the Moon, 1948, Panic in the Streets, 1950, Vertigo, 1958, The Five Pennies, 1959, and Summertime, 1971. For her first four films, she was under contract to RKO. Howard Hughes had her released because she wasn't sexy enough. She signed with Paramount in 1958. Bel Geddes stopped working in the late 1960s to take care of her dying husband. Following his death, she returned to work. At the age of 55, she received a television role that would make her famous. This New Yorker played the ultimate Southern matriarch on Dallas, 1978 to 1990. She missed the reunion shows of this popular series due to health and passed away in 2005. Jack Palance played Blackie, the leader of a group of small-time gangsters. This great actor was born in 1919 in Latimer Mines, Pennsylvania. That sounds like hell. It's one of those places where your best friend falls into a molten vat of iron after telling you to follow your dreams. Palance's father was a coal miner that died of black lung. However, this didn't stop Palance from working in the mines for a time. At almost 6'4", Palance was a great athlete, something that he used in many of his roles. He won a football scholarship to the University of North Carolina. He left this to try professional boxing. He did well until he met a ranked contender in 1940. Palance joined the Army Air Corps during World War II. He was injured by fire during a training flight in 1942. He had several surgeries and was discharged from the military in 1944. He then studied journalism at Stanford. He worked as a sports writer, but he was called to act. Palance began working on Broadway and at one point became the understudy of Marlon Brando in A Streetcar Named Desire. The pair was working out, and Brando took a shot that sent him to the hospital. Palance took his place on the stage. His great work on the stage got him a film contract with 20th Century Fox. His first film was the film noir Panic in the Streets, 1950, and he was amazing, like an animal on the hunt. He teamed with Richard Widmark again for the World War II film Halls of Montezuma, 1951. He was up for the role of Gort, Klaatu Baratu Nikto, in The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, but was replaced by a taller actor. He was in two more film noirs, Sudden Fear, 1952, and Second Chance, 1953, which is a rare 3D. He was in westerns Arrowhead, 1953, and Shane, 1953, for which he received an Oscar nomination. In 1954, he played Attila the Hun in Sign of the Pagan, 1954, and was in the biblical drama The Silver Chalice, 1954. He put in great performances in two more film noirs with I Died 1,000 Times, 1955, a remake of Humphrey Bogart's High Sierra, 1941, and The Big Knife, 1955, where he was in Hollywood and under pressure to confess to a crime. He was amazing in Attack, 1956, where he battled with a cowardly company commander played by Eddie Albert, with Lee Marvin as the battalion commander. He played a returning Nazi soldier that defused bombs for the English and captured Berlin in 10 Seconds to Hell, 1959, and again, he was amazing. He worked overseas and made films such as Revac the Revel, 1960, Barabbas, 1961, Sword of the Conqueror, 1961, and A Bullet for Rommel, 1969. Through his later career, he showed up as a bad guy in films like Young Guns, 1988. However, he showed his real talent in City Slickers, 1991, where he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for Curly. He returned in the sequel City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, 1994, playing the brother of the dead Curly, Duke. We should never forget Curly's words to Mitch Robbins, played by Billy Crystal, "I crap bigger than you." When Palance was on stage to accept his Oscar for City Slickers 1991, he made a comment about casting directors preferring younger actors. He then dropped and did several one-arm push-ups. Palance died at 87 of natural causes in 2006. Zero Mostel played small-time hood Raymond Fitch. Mostel was born in 1915 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
Mostel was interested in art from an early age, and he eventually graduated from City Colleges of New York in 1935 and worked on a master's in art before dropping out. In the heart of the Great Depression, Mostel found work teaching art for the WPA Federal Art Project. He gave art tours and told funny stories. After World War II broke out, he found work as a comedian in nightclubs and picked up the name Zero because he started with nothing. Mostel began working in theater and made his Broadway debut in mid-1942. He spent some time in the U.S. Army but was medically discharged. After his discharge, he entertained troops stationed overseas. Following the war, Mostel began to get work in television. His first film was Dewberry Was a Lady, 1943, but he didn't get going good until Panic in the Streets, 1950. Being a large man, Mostel said he never forgave Kazan for making him run so much during filming. He made 5 more movies that were released in 1951. However, Jerome Robbins testified before the Un-American House Un-American Activities Committee and named Mostel as a communist. Mostel was called before the Illegal Star Chamber on October 14, 1955. He stated that he was not a communist and that his religious convictions prevented him from naming others. He was placed on a blacklist. During this time, he made a living working lower-end nightclubs and selling art. He ran into Kazan, who named names to keep his career going, and told him repeatedly, "You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done that." Mostel began working back on stage in 1958 thanks to Burgess Meredith. He won a Tony Award and missed one play because he was hit by a bus. He recovered and returned to work. For a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, he was asked to work with Robbins, who had named him and fellow cast member Jack Gilford as communist. Mostel said work? Yes. Eat? No. And the left does not have a blacklist. When Robbins came in for his first rehearsal, Mostel said, "Hi, you loose lips." Everyone laughed and the tension was gone. Mostel got another Tony for this play. Mostel went on to Fiddler on the Roof and won another Tony. Mostel was hilarious in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, 1966, and the Mel Brooks directed The Producers, 1967, showing what a great talent he had for comedy. For some reason, he was not cast in Fiddler on the Roof, 1971. In 1974, Mostel returned to the theater. After a few more successes in 1977, he died suddenly from an aortic aneurysm at the age of 62. Paul Douglas played the role of Police Captain Tom Warren. Douglas was born in 1907 in Pennsylvania. Born to a well-off family, Douglas played semi-pro football after high school. In 1928, he became a radio sportscaster. He became one of the highest-paid radio personalities in the U.S. In 1936, he worked on Broadway in Double Dummy. He quickly returned to radio. In 1946, he took 1/10 of his salary to play the heavy in Broadway's Born Yesterday. This propelled him to Hollywood, where in his first role, A Letter to Three Wives, 1949, he did great opposite Linda Darnell. He turned down the film role for Born Yesterday, 1950, because his role was cut to almost nothing. He made 2 more movies with Linda Darnell, Everybody Does It, 1949, and The Guy Who Came Back, 1951. He is better known for 2 baseball films, It Happens Every Spring, 1949, and Angels in the Outfield, 1951. He hit the film noirs with Panic in the Streets, 1950, 14 Hours, 1951, and Clash by Night, 1952, with Barbara Stanwyck. He reteamed with the wonderful Judy Holliday in The Solid Gold Cadillac, 1956. One of my favorites is The Big Lift, 1950, about the Berlin airlift and co-starring Montgomery Clift. He returned to theater in 1957. In total, Douglas was married 5 times. The last 2 marriages were to 2 beautiful actresses, Virginia Fields and Jan Sterling. So, not too shabby. He did some television work but died suddenly in 1959. He was 52 years old. The director of this film, Elia Kazan, jumped into the uncredited role of Cleaver, a mortuary assistant. Kazan was born in 1909 in Constantinople, which is now known as Istanbul. I'm only going to say a little about this guy. He was a director, and he was a good one. He named names. Some of the movies he directed are A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, 1945, Gentleman's Agreement, 1947, The Seagrass, 1947, Film Noir Boomerang, 1947, Panic in the Streets, 1950, A Streetcar Named Desire, 1951, On the Waterfront, 1954, East of Eden, 1955, Baby Doll, 1956, A Face in the Crowd, 1957, Sheriff Taylor, How Could You Do It, and Splendor in the Grass, 1961. However, he named names. Kazan died in 2003. Tiger Joe Marsh was uncredited as the bosun on the Nile Queen. Marsh was a wrestler beginning in the 1920s, and he was the World Heavyweight Wrestling Champ in 1937. He retired in 1954 and found movie and stage work as a thug or a brute. He was the model for the original Mr. Clean. Tommy Reddick was uncredited in the role of the youngster Tommy Reed. Redding had the misfortune of appearing in the worst, maybe as bad as that Jim Carrey stuff, adaptation of a Dr. Seuss story, The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, 1953. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
A poker game is taking place above a jazzy low-end nightclub in New Orleans. One of the players goes outside for air, and the others call him back to the game. The man, Kochak, Louis Charles, comes back to the game saying he is sick and he must leave the game.
Can't play no more. Sit down. I'm sick.
What's the matter with you? You can't quit now.
Gotta quit. Cold. I'm sick.
You wasn't too sick to walk off the boat and win $190 the first night you were in the country.
But this is the kind of poker game it is hard to leave when you're ahead. Raymond Fitch, Zero Mostel, mentions that the man just came in off a ship and that Blackie doesn't like anyone to leave a game like that. Kochak leaves anyway. Poldy, Guy Tomajon, who is Kochak's cousin, and Fitch follow the sick man into the street. Upstairs, Blackie, Jack Palance, examines the cards and decides he has been cheated. Poldy and Fitch follow the sick man into the street. They follow him across the tracks where he is narrowly missed by a speeding train. The two men corner Kochak, who somehow starts winning the fight. From off camera, Blackie fires a few shots, killing Kochak. Blackie takes the money, and the other two take the body. In the morning, a young boy leads the police to where the body has settled in the Mississippi River. The police collect the body and have it sent to the morgue. Cleaver, Elia Kazans, gets the job doing the autopsy. Cleaver, who has been pretty cavalier with the body up to this point, sees something and starts warning people to stay away. Lieutenant Commander Clint Reed, MD, Richard Widmark, is spending his day off with his young son Tommy Reddick. Clint's wife, Nancy, Barbara Bell Geddes, lets him know that he has a call from the office. Clint gets dressed in his U.S. Public Health Service uniform while he spars with Nancy about money and having more children. At the city morgue, they look at cultures under a microscope, and Clint orders the body cremated and everything sterilized. Clint makes sure all the people that have contacted the body are held at the morgue. They give everyone an inoculation. Clint won't tell the men why they are getting shots. Clint briefs the city council and tells them that it may be pneumonic plague, an airborne version of the Black Death from the Middle Ages. They are very skeptical. The mayor, chief of police, and police captain Tom Warren, Paul Douglas are present, but they all downplay the danger because Kochak was killed by a bullet. Clint tricks Warren into admitting that someone dumped the body.
We can have them watched. We know who they are. All but one. The man who killed him. Or men.
Mr. Mayor, this man was shot. The killer wasn't within 10 feet of him. I can prove it.
Was he shot on that riverbank, Captain?
Of course not. He was dumped off the Canal Street Pier about 5:30.
How did he get to the Canal Street Pier?
How do I know? Somebody must have...
Clint doesn't want the press notified. With the mayor's support, Warren is assigned to work with Clint. The newspaper men are already sniffing around as the police begin to haul in everyone that could possibly have killed anybody. Raymond Fitch is hauled in, but he plays dumb. There is very little evidence on the dead man for the police to work with. Clint thinks he came in on a boat. Warren doesn't like doctors because one let his wife die many years earlier. There's a lot of bad blood between Clint and Warren already. Once he is released by the police, Fitch runs to Blackie's place. He meets his wife Angie, Mary Listwood, and they prepare to leave town. Blackie is planning on leaving too, but he doesn't want Angie to come along. Fitch was supposed to bring Poldy, but Poldy refused to come.
Miss Poldy. I told you to bring Poldy. I know you did, Blackie. I went right over there. I told him what you said, but he don't want to go.
He don't want to go? Why don't he want to go? What's the matter with him?
I don't know, Blackie. He was getting dressed to go out. He said he was taking this dame out. He said he didn't want to go. I told him all about what was happening.
Where'd he get the dough to go out? He never had a quarter. You ever know Poldy when he had a quarter?
No, that's right. He's always borrowing from
So where's he
somebody.
get the dough? Why is he all of a sudden taking a dame out? You know, I got a hunch about him.
Because of all the police attention, Blackie thinks Kochak brought something in, and Poldy has it. Blackie brutally sends Fitch out to find Poldy. In 1986, Widmark said Palance warmed up by beating on Zero Mostel, and once they had to send him to the hospital where he was soaked in Epsom pads. Clint goes to the Seamen's Local, which is full of men. He makes an announcement and tries to pass out pictures of Kochak. He offers a $50 reward. The men all clam up.
You got the dough on you, Johnny? Can you tell me anything? I can tell you're taking a terrific chance flashing that kind of dough around this mob. Shipping is tough.
You can say that again.
Clint goes to Frank's place to wait for the information. Frank's place is a really crummy joint. A young woman, Jeanette, Linka Patterson, who looks very out of place, comes in and says she has information. She leads him to a boat where he is surprised by a semi-hostile Charles, Wilson Borog Jr. Charles denies everything, but Jeanette gives it away when she finds out about the disease. Charles finally tells that the ship is the Nile Queen. Clint then gives him a shot. Warren and Clint fly out to the Nile Queen in a seaplane. The sea captain, Emil Meyer, is super hostile. Clint tells the crew that the ship may have the plague. At the captain's orders, the bosun, Tiger Joe Marsh, tries to force the men back to work. A small riot breaks out. The captain orders weapons brought out. A Chinese cook says they have another sick man, and the captain gives in. Warren finds out that Kochak is Greek or Armenian.
Did they ever talk about anything else?
No, sir. Only one time they told me to tell cook to make shish kebab.
Shish kebab. Do you want a shish kebab?
Shut up.
They like shish kebab.
Yes, I'm sure, and if I knew what shish kebab was, maybe we'd be on the trail or
It's
something.
lamb on a skewer. Some of the Greek and Armenian restaurants around town serve it.
Back in New Orleans, Clint and Warren go to see the owners of a Greek restaurant. The couple that owns the place deny ever seeing Kochak, even though his wife is already sick. Fitch and Poldy are in the back. Blackie comes in and the newspaper man is outside. Poldy is getting sick. He has brought in his younger brother, Vince, Tommy Cook. Blackie and Fitch put the squeeze on Poldy. Poldy blurts out that his cousin didn't bring anything into the country. Violet, Darwin Greenfield, comes in and gets money from Blackie. Poldy makes a break and Vince blocks Fitch as they get away. That night, Clint and Warren go to see Charlie, but his boat is gone. They get a radio call that a woman is sick with a fever that matches the profile of what they are looking for. When they get there, the dead woman is the wife of the restaurant owner. The owner recants and gives Kochak's name and where he's staying. The newspaper man is lurking outside. They rush over to the Gloria Hotel. The newspaper man is right behind them. They search Poldy's room, and the manager says a couple of guys were looking for him. When the newspaper man enters the boarding house, Clint tells him the truth, and then Warren has him locked up.
An idiot could figure it out.
You qualify. What do you figure?
I figured the guy had smallpox or cholera or something like that.
It isn't smallpox and it isn't cholera. It's plague. Pneumonic plague.
Take him.
A pleasure. Oh, wait a minute, Warren. What do you think you're trying to
speaks
pull?
to no one.
What's the charge, Warren?
Loitering, public nuisance, anything you like.
You're crazy. I'll have your badge
It's
for
getting
this, Warren. You know I can do
Take
it.
him out.
You'll be walking a beat.
No!
Lucky.
I've been busted by every newspaper man that tried to get in my bars. I'd be mopping floors in a hall of justice years ago. Come on.
Can that reporter really make trouble for him?
Trouble? Where you been living, mister?
That newspaper wanted to put the pressure on him. He'd be lucky if he could get a job mopping floors.
Clint goes to his house, and Nancy can't come near him because he is contaminated. Nancy tries to help, but he is snappy. She makes a cot for him on the porch. Clint is worried about Warren getting into trouble over the newspaper man. Nancy pumps him back up and gives him the will to continue.
You know, today I took a perfectly nice guy, a cop. So I push him around, make a lot of smart cracks about him, and tell him off all day long. He winds up proving he's 4 times a man I'll ever be.
I don't believe it.
Why do I do that? Yeah, I do the same thing to you, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Well?
Every once in a while you get a guilty feeling that you've been missing out, or that you owe something to me or to Tommy or somebody or other. Then you take it out on whoever happens to be around. Mostly I'm around.
So?
So stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
And don't get smart with me. If there's a plague here, you're the most important guy in town. And not only to me.
Yes, ma'am.
She also drops on him that she is pregnant. He finally passes out. Later, Clint is called to meet Warren and the mayor in a city park to avoid reporters. The mayor plans to give the full story to the reporters. Clint still wants to keep a blackout on the news. The mayor gives the story to the reporter. This leaves Clint and Warren 4 hours to wrap up the investigation. Blackie goes to see Poldy's mother. He gives her the name of a doctor for her son. When Blackie finds out the location, he finds Fitch already with Poldy.
First thing we gotta do is get you well. You hear me, Poldy? We gotta get you well. I sent Vince for a doctor. Vince is gonna bring him here. He's gonna get you well.
I ain't gonna get well.
Sure you're gonna get well.
I'm gonna die.
Oh, you ain't gonna die.
I want to confess, please.
You'll confess later.
Get me a priest.
You don't need a priest. You need a doctor.
Fitch thinks Blackie is going to kill Poldy, but Blackie wants what Kochak brought into the country. A nurse comes in and says she has already called an ambulance for Poldy. Vince comes in with the doctor. Since the doctor is paid by Blackie, he plans to keep the sick man in the apartment. Finally, they decide to move Poldy to a private hospital. Blackie and crew begin carrying Poldy downstairs on his mattress. The nurse comes back with Clint. To escape, Blackie tosses Poldy down a couple of flights of stairs. Blackie and Fitch steal a truck and escape. Warren arrives in a police car and they give chase. The two criminals flee into a large coffee warehouse, which oddly is processing bananas. The police swarm the building. Blackie and Fitch run along the roof, but jump back inside when the police fire at them. They slide to the lower floor of the coffee warehouse and run through to the dock. Another police car forces them back inside. A security guard recognizes Blackie and is very friendly. When the police start hollering to stop Blackie, he kills the security guard. Clint wants to capture them alive, much to the chagrin of the tactical captain.
That's it. Let's go. Start issuing rifle, submachine
We can't
gun.
have those men shot, Captain. They're no good to us, dead.
No shooting? What are we supposed to do? Play tag? Who is this guy, anyway?
Come on, Danny. Let me give you a rundown.
I don't need no rundown. These are armed hoodlums. I got one man dead and two wounded already.
know.
Fitch can't take any more running.
I can't go in. We can't get up here. We gotta quit.
Wait, Fitch. I'm getting on that truthful.
Clint goes into the building and yells to the criminals that they may have the plague. Blackie won't give up, and he and Fitch escape through a hole in the floor. They are moving along on wet planks under the dock. Touching the Mississippi River would probably give you the plague if you didn't have it. Clint follows them. Clint finds Fitch in a rowboat, but Blackie is above and knocks Clint out. Widmark said Palance practiced with a rubber gun and then hit him with a real gun during the scene, knocking Widmark out for 20 minutes. Widmark also said Palance was the only actor he was physically afraid of. Blackie is about to kill Clint when Warren fires from a distance. Fitch gives up, but Blackie escapes up a ladder. Blackie crawls along the dock until he makes it to the tie ropes of a cargo ship. He does pretty good climbing up until he makes it to the squirrel excluder thing. When he falls in the water, Warren has him fished out. Warren drives Clint back home. He mentions that they found $200 or $300 worth of undeclared perfume in Poldy's apartment.
Car 17, 37 at 23rd and Katina. Dog barking.
Well, back to the grind again, huh?
A barking dog. They got a lot to worry about. Sending a squad car out for
What's so tough about?
I don't know.
They laugh and are friends. Clint gets a lecture on spending time with his son from the neighborhood painter. Clint reminds Nancy that he remembers about the baby. World famous short summary? Follow your doctor's instructions. Hope you enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you spending the time listening. You can find connections to social media and email on my site at classicmovierev.com. There are links in the podcast show notes as well. This is an independent show, and there is a lot that you can do to help. First and most importantly, jump over to Apple Podcasts and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. If you want to comment, help, or recommend a movie, email me. Beware the Moors.